We're live this morning with my buddy Craig Folds. So Roy couldn't make it today. He had a meeting this morning that he had to go to. So Roy couldn't make it. And by no means is this just a substitute because this guy that you're looking at right here, Craig, has so much good stuff to share with us. And I don't even know what the word of the week is yet. But Craig, why don't you tell us what the word of the week is today, man?
Narrative.
Narrative. All right. Well, give the world a little bit of background on who Craig Folds is.
Oh man, just a humble guy that really has appreciated everything that I've been blessed with. And so I spent 16 years in law enforcement and completed my undergrad and my master's, began teaching. And my wife is a chiropractor. So we have a joint venture together with the business. I run the office side of that as well as teach. And been coaching sports, athletics, football, baseball for the last 20 years, I guess. And so now I'm finishing up my dissertation, or actually in dissertation and my doctorate right now. And this is my second go around. The doctorate program that I was in went out of business in 2018, so I had to start all over again after being in school full-time, working full-time from 2010 on. So it's been quite an interesting journey. So with everything that we have, I thought about this when you asked me to come on, and I began to think about the narrative that we have, and that's why I chose that. So there we go.
You know what? The thing is, and I know, I mean, you and I are friends, but so I know more about you than you're able to cover in a quick introduction. But I think the bigger question is like the question I get a lot is, what is it? What don't you do?
Oh man, that's what Jamie and I were just. Yeah, we were talking about that this morning on the way in. I said it's unbelievable. I have no idea like how we even accomplish these things. You just got to keep pushing, and with everything we have going on, Tanner going to Penn State, he signed his NLI last week for baseball. So I'm real excited for him. And Brooke cheering, and Julia, you know how that is. You've been around her. So she's wide open 24/7. And man, we just have a lot of irons in the fire, but it keeps me busy and it keeps me from being complacent, having downtime. Personal time is good, but it really keeps me focused on what I need to do. So
Yeah,
keep
man.
pushing.
Well, yeah, I hear that. And it's funny because whenever I see whenever I see folks that are at the level where I want to be, like where I am is never good enough for me, and I don't mean that in a sense of I'm not good enough. What I
Right.
mean is I'm not someone who settles for where I am. Like if I achieved, like life is not a destination. Like there's no destination, right? Just a journey of continued improvement and gaining new experiences and gaining new successes, like on a regular basis. So when I see people who are achieving things I want to achieve, or are in places that I want to be, like in terms of maybe success or whatever, I look at them and I'm like, how the heck do you get there? Like, how do you, because right now I know what's on my plate with the things that I do. And, it's all relative, right? Like where I am,
Absolutely.
what I do, it's kind of like, it's for me, it's just normal. But other people sometimes look at it and say, man, how do you do all these things and balance
Right.
all of these things? And I'm like, well, no, I'm not even close. I want to be over there where that guy's at and achieve those level things. And so then I got to remember that, like, it is all relative, and wherever I am and what I'm doing is maybe normal for me, but it's maybe elevated for somebody else. So
Yeah.
I think just things change, it's just different. So if I look at somebody like John Maxwell and I'm like, how is he just got writing out a book every month and doing these conferences and like, how does he get it all done? And
Mm-hmm.
then he's probably not putting any more effort in than I am. He's just doing different things that I'm doing.
That's right.
Maybe that's the case. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's certainly different levels, to life, and I think it's what we put into it, what we work for. My son, we were talking last night, and I try my best to, or not try, but I come up with these thoughts in the middle of the night. I will literally be, watching TV, laying in bed, whatever have you, sitting here at the office doing whatever. And if y'all hear patients in the background, okay, every now and again, that's my wife's chiropractor, so we have people coming in and out. Anyway, with that said, I think that different levels happen based on our maturity, based on, again, the narrative that we tell ourselves, based to the things that we attach ourselves to, our ability to connect to our desires. And that's a strong word too. When you think of desire, it means from the celestials. And so those sorts of things are very important. Wasting time on things that maybe our purpose isn't, we're not driven for that moment. We're not driven for that purpose in our life. Maybe we couldn't handle something at that moment, or maybe we could handle something more and we are complacent and we have fear, something of that manner. I think, again, narrative is something that's a powerful word because it embraces so many different things. And when you're talking about moving from sections of your life and you talk about different people on different levels, there was a moment in my life where I thought I wanted to be with certain people that were at that time on a way, in my perception, larger level than what I was. And I took on some things that I was not ready for at a certain point in time in my life. And so I think that when we open up, biblically, not to preach or whatever, but just to say I'm a Christian and I believe this, I use this in life coaching, that sort of thing. I think that when we delight ourselves in the Lord, that he will give us the desires of our hearts. And that doesn't mean that we have to be this perfect individual. It just means that when we seek what it is that our purpose is, that we're going to start walking in that. Not everyone is meant to be, a president of a bank, and not everyone is meant to be the major in the Air Force or Army or what have you. You know what I mean? Right. Like, I think that we have to find our groove and our patterns. And so even with this job I just took, teaching at a university here, I was asked the question, what is your motto? And I said, nothing is motto with me. What's a motto with you? We kind of joked about it, but I told the lady that asked me this, I said, really and truly, people try to find the meaning of their life and they try to find purpose in life. And so several years back, I had to sit down again. I was coaching some individuals. That's what I do on the, I really enjoy life coaching and everything. And you learn a lot when you're coaching people about yourself and about, different situations. And I started asking, what is my meaning? What is my purpose? And the reality of the situation is that you don't really know the meaning or the purpose of life until you know your meaning in life. Right. Life doesn't have that same meaning and purpose to you if you don't know what your meaning and purpose is in life. So sometimes those things are hard to find because we're not clear. We have a narrative in our mind where we tell ourselves that I'm not as good looking as Joey maybe, or maybe I'm not the public speaker, or maybe my family didn't reinforce those things when I was growing up to instill values in me that I can accomplish whatever it is that my heart is set to, not my mind alone, but my heart. Those things inside your heart and your gut. So the narrative we say, we connect ourselves and we create this energy, okay, and a narrative of success or failure based on, in my opinion, and the things I've gone through, based on the reinforcements, based on our conditioning, those sorts of things, and our belief systems, our value systems. So that the narrative is a deep, intrinsic discussion, I believe, discussion within yourself that either motivates or demotivates you to accomplish certain goals in your life. So those levels are important to understand that. I heard a pastor one time say, he pastors in Orlando, a very large church, and he told me, people are scaffolding in your life. Events are scaffolding in your life. Some people are meant to take you up, and then you move the scaffolding, you have to tear it back down and move to the next spot. So anyway, narrative.
I think that's huge, man, because especially if you look at this year, and I was just thinking about this yesterday, how like COVID season has had like, if you think back to like high school or, any chapter of your life, you can smell it, you can taste it, you can feel it. Like you can remember what the cafeteria in elementary school smelled like.
Absolutely.
Right. You know what I mean? Right. And you can taste the pizza and the green beans and like it. And for me, like COVID season has had that. I was thinking about like a song came on, like a TikTok song came on. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was so from when everybody was completely locked down and we were doing quarantine karaoke and I'm riding around the house on a hoverboard and like it just had a feel to it. And I think that chapters have feels to them. Like, and I think it's kind of cool, man. I think it's cool that you can capture those moments and almost capitalize on them, because if you can go back to those chapters in life and really be in those moments again, you can say, what was the lesson, or who are the people? Do I want to do more of that, or do I want to stay away from that?
Sure.
Sometimes that's the answer.
Yeah, so Mama, she passed away October the 10th, and my mother, they were avid mask wearers and things like this. And this is a personal thing, but I'm transparent, so I don't mind to share.
Yeah.
And, she wound up getting COVID, her, my father, and my sister, or one of my sisters, all at the same time in the same week. And she wound up recovering from COVID itself, but then set up bronchitis, I think, and then went into pneumonia. And long story short, she went into the hospital. 29 days she was there. Of the 29 days, I think she was on the ventilator like maybe 20 days or something like that. She developed pneumonia, and they wound up having to put PICC lines. One thing led to another. She began having difficulties from sepsis and different things, and set up infection in her body and stuff. And so when she passed, we had to make the decision to keep her on life support or not. And it was one of the most difficult decisions that we've ever made before. And in law enforcement, I've done everything pretty much except be a chief of police. I mean, we see those things, right? So I want to thank all our service members and law enforcement officers and public safety officials and military service. All those people are so important. The nurses that are out here fighting this thing. And I saw the toll that it took on the nurses too. So the wing that my mother was in was, there were like, I think 16 patients or something that week that passed away that were, elderly from COVID or whatever, the symptoms of it. And when we went into the room to take her off of the life support, hospice came in, and so we got to say our final goodbyes and things of that nature. But the narrative that we had and the levels of life, and I've asked myself this several times, like, what was her purpose? What was in the 64 years she was alive, and I started thinking about the things that she instilled within me, and the values and the lessons, even as a teenager. And it all put it in perspective when we were holding her hand in the last 32 minutes of her life. It all put it in perspective for me that none of this stress that we carry, none of this worry that we carry, the family issues we carry, yes, it's real. Yes, it's in the moment. Yes, it hurts from time to time. And we also have great times, but those things that we carry, the narrative that we tell ourselves about someone, when it comes down to it, it's about love. It's about forgiveness. It's about compassion and empathy. You mentioned those on your show the other week. Those sorts of things are so important for us. And when I saw her lying there, it really put it in perspective for me. Even as a teenager, all of the things that we went through, it doesn't matter now. So what did I tell myself about those situations? And now, that she's not here, I've really reflected on those things, not in a negative aspect, but just how can I be a better person? How can I show someone empathy? Because before we had the I'm sorry's, the I'm praying for yous, and I made a choice and a decision that I will never tell someone I'm praying for you again if I'm truly not going to pray for you.
Right.
We say that as a consoling remark, oh, I'm praying for you. But sometimes people don't need to hear I'm praying for you. They might be mad at God. There may be somebody watching this or that's going to watch this that's angry with God right now, or angry with themselves about something. So again, that narrative we tell ourselves. And really and truly, Joey, I believe we all face things in life, and we're not that different, honestly. We all have shared experience. So those things that we say and those things that we tell ourselves, the belief systems we have, those intrinsic things that we have, we can tell ourselves enough is enough, and I'm tired. Okay, but then you got to push past that.
Mm-hmm.
We have to push past that. If you want to excel and be successful, whatever that means to you, there's a narrative that you have to be able to establish within yourself, that you have to understand there's something bigger than you. There's something greater than you. And I'm not talking about just God. I'm talking about in life. Like, what level of achievement do you want to go through, and what are you willing to do to get there? That's the biggest thing. What are you willing to do?
Right. I mean, it's about changing the narrative. I think so. And it takes resilience to do
Absolutely.
that, which I think as a whole, as a society, we've lost over the past 20, 30 years. I mean, I know you and I were raised way different than my kids anyway. I mean, I see how you are with your kids, and you are a great father, and your wife is a great father.
Thank you.
And I see that, and I know that you probably, I see you exercising some of those things. This is what I always say, right? I want my children to learn every lesson I learned, but not the way I had to learn it. I don't want my kids to have to live without electricity to appreciate electricity,
Facts.
And because that's what our parents told us, right? Hey, man, if, I'm sure yours did. I mean, this is what mine told me is I want you, they're telling me success for me looks like you being more successful than me. I want you to have it better than I had when I was a kid. I don't know if your parents ever told you that, but mine certainly told me that. And that was what was instilled in us. And, but here's the narrative. So you're going to have to work hard because you can't have these certain things. Like where I come from, people like me don't go to college, right? Mm-hmm. People like me don't go to college. We don't become We don't become leaders of companies. We don't like a baby step would be good, just a little bit better than my dad. Maybe I would have been the manager at the construction company, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean, or did. But the narrative was, here's the biggest narrative I had to overcome, and I'll share just to make it simple. Uh, I was 16 years old when I found out I was going to be a father for the first time, and the narrative was, your life is over. What are you going to do now? If you're any kind of man, you're going to drop out of high school and you're going to go to work because you need to provide. You're going to marry that girl because now you're going to be a daddy. Bull crap. Okay, I learned that the hard way, and I have no regrets. I have zero regrets in life because everything that I've experienced has made me who I am. But what I learned from that experience, and this goes back to the word narrative, the narrative was, your life is over. You got to go to work. You can't go to school, right? You got to do this. You can't do that. You can't be a father if you're not married to the girl. What a load of crap that I learned that was through experience, because being a father has nothing to do with your with being married to the mother, if that makes sense. And I'm not suggesting that people should go out and be absentee fathers. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that I learned that I need to have a healthy relationship with the mother of my children, regardless of the nature of our relationship, whether I'm married to her or not. I need to have a healthy relationship with the mother of my children so that my children can see an example of what healthy parenting is. You know what I mean? That has nothing to do with dropping out of high school and getting a job and marrying somebody that you have no business being married to. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I had that experience.
it's interesting because it's when you talk about those things like obstacles that we overcome, the things that we've been conditioned to believe. Again, your Alfred Bandura, one of my favorite theorists, cognitive theorist. He started out as a behaviorist, and it's really interesting when he talks about your environment conditioning your behavior and reinforcing your behavior, but your behavior is reinforcing and conditioning your environment. And I think that the word mistakes, and failure, those sorts of things are strong words to use, because really failure isn't a loss until you quit. Failure actually it teaches you things. Baseball, for example, I love the game of baseball, love it. It's because it's a game of failure ultimately. I mean, you look at the Hall of Famers, you look at people that are in the Hall of Fame, and even a batting average of like a 254, 264 up to a 300. If you can achieve a 300 batting average, man, you've done something well. Same thing with pitchers. If they have below a 3 ERA, I mean, there's guys that are sitting well above 3 ERAs right now that are making millions of dollars, because they can throw a baseball, and people see that. They see the level you're on right now. They see levels and they compare themselves. So they attach themselves to these sorts of things, just as I have done. You have done, I'm sure, the same thing we've talked about, that we all want to achieve this materialistic what do you call it? Status. If we have certain things, but really and truly, if it's not in your heart and the narrative that you have with failure and things like that, if you're hearing in your mind, I'm failing. Well, Will Smith was talking about failing forward, those things that we learn from failure to be better. And when people, what they don't see is the hard work you've put in. What they don't see is the tears that you put in and the relationship issues that come with the dedication to success and whatever that means for you. They don't see the work behind the scenes. And my son last night, again, we talk a lot, man. We have a real open, discussion about different things. And with where he's going in college, there's a lot of people that have asked how he's doing this. How does Tanner get to do that? Well, because he puts the work in. It's not that he goes out there and throws harder than everybody else or whatever. It's that the kid grinds. It's that through failure, he literally learns how to do it better the next time. So that narrative in his mind, and the people see one side of something and they think, I can just do that. I can do what Joey's doing right now. Well, you haven't been in Joey's shoes. You haven't been in Craig's shoes. I haven't been in Maxwell's shoes. I haven't been, the president's shoes, whatever. Man, I tell you what, you talk about resiliency, regardless of who's in that office or not, that the way that our world is set up and the condemnation that the public has for different officials, no matter what, that's a tough place to be. And I can remember growing up as a child thinking, I want to be the president one day. Man, I tell you, I don't care what side of the aisle. No, my Lord, man, what side of the aisle you're on.
Even if you win, half of the world hates, half of the country hates you.
Yeah.
Right away. You've already got the odds against you because half the country hates. I want to go back to Failing Forward because I love that. And that is one of John Maxwell's books. And that's that video that Will Smith recorded is exactly from the Failing Forward book. And this is what John Maxwell says at the very, I think it's in the first couple of pages of the book. He says the difference between ordinary people and high performers is their view of and response to failure. And he goes on to explain that most people think that they failed, but what really happens is they quit before they have a chance to fail.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think?
I think because goes back to resilience. You know, it gets hard, and this is the hardest thing I've ever faced in my life. And I think that's why some of the people with the roughest backgrounds go on to achieve the best things in life, because you have this path. Like there's a crossroads that you go and you say, well, my parent was an addict, so that's my excuse for becoming an addict. Or we were poor, so that's my excuse for being poor and staying poor. Or this is the lot that I was cast, so I'm gonna go down this road, and we use that as an excuse or a crutch to not be a performer. I'm a failure from the beginning, so I'm gonna always be a failure. So that's my narrative. I'm gonna stick to it. Or I want to change the narrative. And those people who decide to change the narrative are going to use that lesson that they learned as resilience training and to achieve other things. Hey, man, you ain't gonna put me nowhere I've never been before. You know, 1998 was a year of struggles and challenges. That was the year that my wife had left me and took kids with her. That was the year that my father died. That was the year that I lost my job. My car broke down. There was a lot of things happened that year for me, right? And this is a true story. I mean, I literally laid in my trailer. Man, this could be a whole thing. And I want this to be more about you than me, but this is such a good story, man. And this is my testimony, truthfully. This is my testimony. I had lost everything that I had. And I remember the power got shut off. I was doing things to get money that would have put me in jail quick. And I wasn't getting big money. I was just getting enough money to buy 29-cent hamburgers at McDonald's on Tuesday, putting them in the freezer and eating them all week until next Tuesday. That was what I was doing. And so when the electric got cut off, I didn't have nowhere to keep my cheeseburgers. And I laid on the floor that night in that trailer with no power, in the dark, no possessions, because whatever I'd had that I didn't send, with my ex to, for my children to have, I'd already sold to buy cheeseburgers. And I laid there that night when the power got cut off in the middle of the floor in that trailer park, and I cried. And I cried hard, and I cried to God, and I said, and I never prayed like this before in my life. And I was raised in the church, and I knew who God was, but I laid there crying, and I said, God, this is not why I dropped out of school. I dropped out to provide. I went to work to provide. I said, I don't know what to do next. And I just cried out, and it was almost as if God audibly spoke to me and said, thank you for turning this over to me. It's what I've been asking you to do your whole life, And so that's what happened. The next morning I got up and I joined the Army. And it sounds like a last resort thing, but what really was for me was this turning point where I said, this ain't about me. I know whatever decision I make, if I trust that God's going to carry me through it, I'm going to put that on him. That's what he wants, and that's where everything changed for me. And that resilience kicked in. And I said, I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to follow this path that because I was always been poor, I'm going to stay poor. Because I've always been a victim of circumstances, I'm going to remain a victim of circumstances. That was the day that I turned everything around for me. And really, Craig, since that day, I'm not worried about much. Because what's there to worry about? You're not going to take me where I haven't been. Like I said, I lost everything that year. And that night, literally lost my power and everything, turned it over to God. And then the resilience, that's where I was going with this to answer your question, is the resilience that came from the struggles of my life strengthened me to achieve everything else that was going to happen. Everything I was going to achieve. So I don't have any fear fear or worries because God has it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I don't have to worry about those things because it's all in God's hands. All I have to do is be in tune with Him and be obedient to Him, and it's all going to be all right.
I think, yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Joey. I know you and I have talked about different things, and we have a very similar, in some perspective or some manner, background, obviously with the church and not being raised with a ton of money and those sorts of things. You know, I remember in 2005 when I was in law enforcement, I had my first major surgery, and my wife was at home with a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, or I'm sorry, a newborn. She was actually 8 months old when I had my first serious surgery on my left ankle. I've had 9 major surgeries because of autoimmune issues that I don't have to deal with anymore. But I was so stressed out in the narrative that I told myself I was building all these things, but fear. You know, there's an underlying, I think that a lot of times people are afraid. Maslow had what's called the Jonah complex. I love Abraham Maslow, but the Jonah complex is the fear of greatness and accountability. People avoid greatness because of accountability, because of fear, right? So when we're fearful of things, that it does something neurologically, systematically to our bodies. Fear, you hold it in your muscles, you hold it in your emotions, all these different things. And the fear of failure, the fear of being great, one of the two, you know, I think it really goes back to those sorts of things. And somebody that, when I was in 2005, I was out for literally almost a full year with this ankle surgery. It was just me working. Jamie was at home with the kids. By choice. She was actually beginning her college career to be, you know, for chiropractic and everything. But the point is, I was getting $170 a week through the agency I was working at. I got injured in the line of duty initially, and then it set up a chain reaction of things. And with that said, we literally had one vehicle. We lived in a 14 by 20, okay, one room. It had a bathroom, basically apartment kind of thing that my parents built, and $170 a week. We had to file bankruptcy. We had to, all these different things. And slowly and surely, you know, as I came back to work, when I recovered, I came back to work, and we just began realizing things were more important than material. And I think when you invest in yourself, that's when you really invest in yourself and you better for yourself, not for anyone else, but first His kingdom, right? But then for yourself to figure out what that is and how to overcome those fears, because when you lose it all, like, fear is gone. What else can happen? You've been there. I mean, short of death, you know? And so there, even now, like, really and truly, that you have something, you didn't have it before you had it anyway. So Jamie and I were just talking about this morning about fear of the narrative that we tell ourselves, and fear of, I have this and now I'm going to lose it. Let me tell you, you got to where you are because you worked for it, no matter who you are. And if you desire something else, go to school, do whatever it is that you have to do. Go, if you want to be a pilot, or if you, whatever, I don't know, a mechanic. I mean, you know, go do those things to invest in yourself. I don't care what COVID is doing. I mean, yeah, it's fear mongering. It's driven in fear. You can still be great. You can still be accomplished. You can still do things in your life, your desires, and nobody can stop you. Okay. If you decide, when you decide in your heart and your mind, your heart first, but your mindset and your heart set has to align. And when you decide those things, I don't care what obstacles come in front of you. I saw a video of a guy in the Dominican Republic that literally his legs, he had from his knees down, no legs. And he was out there playing baseball, fast pitch softball. And he was a pitcher running on nubs on the ground. And I posted the other day on Twitter, I said, oh my goodness, reality check. What's the excuse? Like, you know, I mean, there's people that do great things, and we get caught up in self-pity. We get caught up in, woe is me, nobody's facing what I'm facing. Who cares about what everybody else is facing or doing? It's your situation. It's your life. Take control of that. Well, control is an illusion, but do what you have to do, right, to get unstuck. Those narratives in your mind, we call them gremlins in coaching, you know, with ICF and stuff. Those gremlins, you can't help who's on your bus already. You cannot help the passengers that ride your bus. But what you can do is move those guys or female, whatever, those passengers to the back of the bus and put the new passengers in the front, so you can have that discussion of, okay, this is where we're going. I'm driving. I need to know where I'm going. You know, those are the narratives that we have and overcome fear. But, you know, nothing to fear but fear itself is what I've heard. And the president said it. And I think we have to overcome fear. And to have fear really is to do a disservice. And we all have fear in different ways, but to be fearful of failure and to be fearful of greatness because of something that happened in our childhood, that was your childhood. You know, Paul said, when I was a child, I thought as a child, but when I became a man, I spoke as a man. And I think, and I don't mean that towards women, men and women, but that's biblical. But the point is, we have to realize that no one's going to do it for us.
Right.
No one's going to do it for you. We live in a world right now. When you and I were growing up, Transformers and Saturday mornings came on and the American flag was flying, and the F-16 was in the air, and they would shut the TV off at midnight, I think it was, with the same type thing, and the Star Spangled Banner. And now all that stuff, there's social media and there's pressures and there's all this kind of stuff. And while it's great, it also has, it's research shows that it's producing anxiety and it's depression and all these sorts of things, because people see what other people put out there and it looks like people have their stuff together. So
the fear of failure is that someone else is going to judge me when I fail. So if I try and you see me try and fail, then that's what I'm really afraid of. I'm not afraid of failure. I'm afraid of your perception of me when I fail.
Right.
And if we can get that out of the way, again, going back to narrative, if you can get that out of the way, and I'm not saying don't care what people think about you. See, this is the rub I have with some of these social media influencers. They're like, F everybody else, screw what they think. It doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, that's true. But you should care what your boss thinks about you when you go to work, because they have a little bit of power over your career. You should care what your parents think, because we should respect our parents and we should not disrespect them for the sake of doing what I want to do. I think that don't worry about what people think of you gets taken out of context too commonly these days. The point I want to say about don't care what people think, what I'm saying is don't do it for other people, do it for you. Like, don't be afraid. Those people who are judging you have never tried the thing you're trying, because if they did, they would understand the journey that you're traveling. They're going to see that they know the struggle. They know that you don't become famous overnight, or you don't become a world-class athlete by trying. You become a world-class athlete by doing, just like your son's doing. You know what I mean? Like but people get afraid of what other people will think about them if they try and fail.
And the reality is we all have failed. Those same people that we're fearful of having judgment from have failed themselves in life somewhere along the way.
And failure is good, though.
It is good.
That means that this is going back to the point that Maxwell made. We quit before we have a chance to fail. Because if we truly fail, that means we've literally given it our all. I tell my kids this. I say, my daughter said, I'll never forget this. And this maybe 5 or 6 years ago, she's like, Dad, I'm worried about this test coming up. And I said, well, do everything you can do to get a good grade. And so part of that story was when she came back and she's like, I did everything. I said, did you do everything? She said, I did everything I could. I said, then don't worry about the grade, because that score doesn't matter if you know in your heart that you did everything. Because quitting before you fail looks different. So here's what it looks like. If you did everything you can do, and I asked her this, I said, did you study? I studied. Did you complete the workbook? I completed the workbook. Did you get to bed early? I went to bed early. Did you wake up on time? Woke up on time. Did you have a good breakfast? Yeah. On the bus to school, did you study your notes? Yes, I did. When you got to class, did you pick out your notes one more time? I did everything I could do, Dad. Guess what? Then the score doesn't matter, because if you've done everything you can do and you fail the test, you've done everything you can do, and that's a win. That's a win. Now, if you quit short of failure, then what you did is you didn't go to bed early. You didn't study your notes. You didn't complete the work, but you didn't do all of the things you could do. And you deserve a poor grade. And that's okay, because you learn from it. You learn that, hey, if I don't do these things, then I'm going to have a negative result. And if I do all these things, the result doesn't matter. You get what I'm saying?
That's why it's called a test. And I love that, Joey. That's why it's called a test. It's meant to either pass or fail. And if you fail, then you have to learn the information so you can pass the next time. And I tell our guys in baseball, there's 9 guys on that field, but it is it's a team sport, but it's an individual sport as well. Each one has a performance. Same thing with any sport, really. But baseball, again, I mean, there's a guy at the plate that's literally, if there's a runner on second, you've got to move that runner over in order to go up, or whatever. And I tell them all the time, I'm not worried about the scoreboard. Yeah, you want to win by the scoreboard. Of course you want to win. But if there's 9 individual victories, all right, if they take care of the small things, individually, it's going to filter into their team. And once their team figures some things out and they know what the strengths and weaknesses are for each person, that's really important to realize that I tell them getting better every single practice, getting better every single outing is what we strive for. It's not about the scoreboard. The scoreboard will take care of itself. And I correlate that to life. I mean, when we're proficient in the small things, we get up, make our beds. We get up and we set 3 goals during the day that are realistic goals. You accomplish those goals. You begin to reinforce your own narrative that hey, I can actually do this. And you start off with those small beginnings, right? Because they lead to big endings. Small beginnings lead to big endings. And if we can literally accomplish those small tasks, it may be small, but my Lord, none of us when we were born just got up out of the womb and took off running across the hospital floor and was like, see y'all, and that's we had to learn to crawl. We had to learn to walk. We had to learn to roll before we could even crawl. I mean, and as adults, when you're moving up through this, it's truly amazing that's why I think we have to have childlike faith, because as a baby, I don't remember this necessarily, but as a baby, I don't think I was very fearful to roll over. I don't think I was very fearful to start crawling. I didn't care if I pooped my pants. How great would that be? To have somebody change your pants for you. I'm just saying, like, we weren't fearful of those things that children are not fearful of. It's only through our reinforcements that people create narratives in their minds to say, okay, this is bad or that's not bad, or this is good and that's not good. Look, it's not about good or bad. It's about your ability to overcome and be resilient, to change the narrative in your mind, to rise above the situation you're in. My dad says, don't be under the circumstances, be above the circumstances. I love that. He says the sun is always shining above the clouds. And when you're flying, is true. You can come through the worst storm of your life in an airplane. But once you get above the clouds, man, it's all sunshine. And that's what I posted the other day. People don't see the clouds are absorbed like moisture from the earth, right? From water and and they hold all that. There's dirt. There's all kinds of stuff in the water. Think about where the water comes from. There's fish and fish poop and all kinds of mess in the water, pollution and all this, and it goes up into the clouds. All that stuff correlates to our lives. And I posted this on Facebook the other day, that all of the tears we cry, all of the circumstances that we've had, all of the ups and downs and all of the things of life that make us, our cloud pulls that up and it holds us. But when you get above that thing and you're sitting on that cloud, don't let anybody pull you off your cloud 9. Don't let anybody take you out of the sunshine for that moment, because guess what? What goes up must come down, and there's peaks and valleys in our life. So Tanner said the hungry wolf on top of the mountain, he said this last night, the hungry wolf on top of the mountain isn't as hungry as the wolf climbing the mountain. And I get that. That's a really cool saying for a 17-year-old. At the same time, I told him, I said, that's because the wolf at the top of the mountain is resting, and he's already gotten fat from eating when he got to the top. And he's storing up that fat for the next climb. So he'll be the wolf that's on the next climb, where the wolf is on the other peak. He's got to be hungry to get up to that point if that's what he chooses to do. So it's resilience, it's narratives, it's desires. It's all these things we've talked about that allow us to overcome ultimately fear of failure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, that's so powerful. And I'm glad you brought this word to the word of the week this week, man. We got to wrap it up, but do you got any last thoughts you want to share with the audience before we log off?
Yeah, I just want to, thank you first of all for having me. And I appreciate everyone that's going to watch this, that is watching right now with us and being with us, for sharing this moment, this experience. And I would just say, no matter what our country's leaders do, and I'm not getting political, no matter who's in that office, no matter what Congress and Senate does, they work for the people ultimately. All right. But as a person, as an individual, I can't allow those things. And I encourage someone today not to allow influence of what someone says you can or cannot do to cause fear and to change a narrative in your mind. If you have a dream and you have a desire, you have a goal, there's no one that can stop you. If you put your mind to it, you will always find a way to overcome and get through this thing. So be encouraged today and know that life is good, man. People are good. I believe people are good. And we have to just love each other, empathize with people, encourage somebody, invest in somebody, because what you invest in and what the seeds that you sow are going to come back to you. So don't be discouraged today. Know that great things are happening in your life, and keep plugging away. Overcome.
Man, that's so powerful. Thanks for sharing that with us. I firmly believe that there's nobody in any political office that's going to narrate my life for me on my day-to-day, man. So I love that. Be kind to people, right? Live your life, do your things, take those steps, go ahead and try hard, fail if that's what it takes, but don't quit, man. I love it. Craig, thanks so much, man. I know you got a podcast that's going to be coming out soon, so we'll share that whenever you get. Maybe you'll let me come to your podcast.
Anytime, man.
There, man. And then we'll go ahead and post like your Twitter handle and all that kind of stuff in the comments or in the description so people can find you and get a hold of you. But thanks so much for joining us, Craig. I appreciate you, man. And, I'll catch you next time, brother.
Sounds good, my friend. Thank you.
All right, man. See you.
Take care.